After King David sinned through a vulgar display of power against Bathsheba and her husband Uriah, God sent the prophet Nathan with a severe indictment of David's conduct. Part of the reprimand included the prophetic warning that there would be trouble arising within King David's own household, one of the consequences of his bad behavior and his sin against his neighbors. This weekend in our message, we're looking at 2 Samuel chapter 18, in which we see some of those consequences and the outcome of that behavior. There's a ripple effect that comes from David's misdeeds, as well as from the times in his life when he gets it right. And what happens in this chapter and in the chapter surrounding it is that David's own misconduct against neighbors comes home to roost within his own household. Half-brothers and half-sisters, that arrangement caused by the many different wives David ends up with, end up doing the same kind of things David did, but to one another. It's a truly tragic household that emerges in David's later years. And it leads to one son, Absalom, actually mounting an outright rebellion against King David. David loses the throne for a while. And in an echo of Nathan's grim warning, Absalom even inherits for a time David's harem. It's a bit of a gross story as well. Well, tragically, one of the outcomes among many tragedies is that David wants his men to spare Absalom's life when the revolt comes to an end. But Absalom, who among other things is very proud of long flowing locks, ends up getting tangled in a tree as he tries to escape on a mule. And the general Joab's armor bearers catch Absalom and end his life. David is heartbroken over the loss of his son. And the closing verses we'll be looking at this weekend contain the refrain, "O Absalom, my son, would that I have died instead of you." This is one of those passages that is difficult to pull some decent lessons for our own lives from. But I think, friends, what I would invite you to reflect on, and what I'll be looking at in the message, and what I invite you to join me in conversation around, maybe by commenting below in this video, by thinking your own thoughts, or by joining us for worship this coming weekend. What I invite you to think about is this: mercy is important. Selective mercy is not enough. David asked his men to have mercy on his son Absalom. Some of them were the same men that David asked to set up Uriah for a fall, for death, after David's sin with Bathsheba. On the one hand, he wants these men to show mercy. At another time, he asks them for exactly the opposite. And in our own lives, it's very difficult to make the journey from a selective mercy reserved for some to a general mercy, which is a characteristic of God towards us and all the world. And yet, an expansion of mercy really is not just the way of God, but can save us from some particular heartaches. So friends, we think about the place of mercy in the midst of our lives, in good times and bad times, and we contemplate the repercussions of a lack of mercy in these stories of Scripture. I hope you'll join me as we look at these difficult passages and still believe in finding some truths for our own lives in them. Again, we're looking at 2 Samuel chapter 18. To get the full story of Absalom, you'll need to back up and read a couple chapters leading into it to see all that happens. Thanks for joining us for this preview, and I hope to find other ways as we go forward to continue to journey through Scripture with you. God bless.